Hello, and welcome back to day 2 of the summer series. I actually, when thinking about what to say today, realised yesterday I didn't introduce myself for those that might never have met me in person or here. So I'm Matt Manners, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Inspiring Workplaces Group. So hopefully that rights yesterday's wrong. You're not here to see me anyway. You're here to see our great storytellers this week. And yesterday was arguably our strongest opening in the past 4 years, with sessions from Bruce Daisley and Deborah Corrie. And they're now both on demand on our content section, as will all our talks go there as we have them throughout the week. As I said yesterday, Inspiring Workplaces offers all this content for free. Our community's free, our events are free, as that's part of our mission to try and help you and us change the world through the world of work. So please go discover hundreds more videos that exist there. I did also promise that we'd say a little bit about our business throughout the week. And one bit of information is that we're also the world's #1 non-survey based awards, recognizing people first organizations, and that awards program now operates right across the world, and we're open for entries in 2025. So if you're running a great place to work, then please go check out that awards program. It might just suit you. But let's get back to day 2. And following on from an incredibly strong start yesterday, we've got 2 fantastic storytellers for you today. And our first storyteller is actually managing director. Get that frog out of my throat. Managing director from H&H, our lead partner this year. And they'll be taking us through the subject of supercharging productivity through internal communications. And before we welcome that speaker, I also just want to say that their idents at the beginning of each session have just got better over the 4 years too. They're absolutely fantastic and really give that summer feel. So without further ado, please welcome to the summer series, Cathy Phillips.
Thanks very much, Matt. Thank you very much for that glowing introduction. That was very kind.
Sorry, I tripped over a few words there, but I'm going to leave you to it, and I will see you again shortly.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are joining us today. It sounds like a brilliant day yesterday, so I look forward to talking you through our little presentation. So without further ado, trust the process. It's more than just a catchphrase you see on social media. This is kind of a mindset that's essential for anyone who's looking to achieve growth or self-improvement. And it's a powerful reminder that regardless of how things unfold, you'll always reach your goals if you've got that right foundation and clear vision. And I hate to mention it, but think back to 2020. We were kind of thrust into lockdown, weren't we? Forced to adapt and transform our businesses almost overnight, and all from the confines of our homes. We had no choice but to trust that process as we fundamentally changed how we worked. And each step, each makeshift desk that we produced showed us that we can not only survive, but thrive in really unexpected ways. So today we're going to take the learnings from that lockdown experience and dive into how trusting the process can drive success and innovation, even in the most uncertain of times. And when we made that shift in 2020, we never looked back. But the reality is, looking back is exactly what some CEOs are starting to do now. And perhaps it's a touch of rose-tinted glasses and some wistful memories of what life was like in the old days, kind of when we were all hanging around the office and crowding around flip charts and covering every surface with Post-it notes. Could it be that trust in the process has flipped to mistrust in the process? Well, according to KPMG, 64% of CEOs predict that people will have returned back to the office full-time by 2026. They feel that remote working has hampered productivity, creativity, and collaboration. And who could argue with that? Well, actually, employees can. When People Management surveyed 2,000 UK office workers, 73% of them claimed to be more productive when working from home. And we did some research for a white paper on culture and actually found similar results too. So who's right? Well, we don't know right now. The results are so mixed and the debate still rages and the evidence still continues to add weight to both sides. We know that remote working isn't feasible for everyone, nor does it float everyone's boat. It requires discipline, good time management, self-initiation and focus, and they're qualities that don't come naturally to everyone. Some people are happy not to have those qualities at all, let's be honest. But in reality, for many organisations and for IC teams, this is about creating a balance, an environment where both can thrive. And we believe that the challenges that come from working remotely are not going to be solved by simply ordering everybody back into the office. And even though instinctively we feel that people may be physically more productive, conversations flow easier when they're side by side, and that ideas get bounced around more frequently, and that naturally produces productivity. Is that actually the case, or is that just our perception? Back in 2018, so pre-lockdown, the Royal Society did some research observing office workers as they moved from cubicles, if you remember those, to an open plan setup. They attach sensors, which sounds a bit kind of matrix-like, but they attach these sensors to the employees so they could track the number and nature of interactions before and after the move. And the assumption was that by moving those physical boundaries, in other words, knocking down those walls, it would naturally lead to more face-to-face interactions. But the results were a bit of a shocker. In-person interactions actually dropped by 72% in the open plan environment, while sending emails shot up to 56%. Absolutely not the results they were expecting. But when you think about the science, it starts to make sense. And it all comes down to psychology. As humans, we're hardwired to connect with each other. But on balance, we equally seek psychological privacy. And we make sense of our environment by breaking it up into modules, because we can't, in our brains, process too much information at once. It becomes too overwhelming if we try. So an open plan office with all of those sounds, scents, movements around is a bit like being in a kind of neon lit 90s nightclub, if you're young enough or old enough to remember that sort of thing. So that's where you see people wearing headphones or staring intently at that screen and pretending that they're very busy to avoid being interrupted. And it's also why colleagues choose to send an email rather than stand up, go over and speak to people, even if they're only a few desks away. So that tells us that even in 2018, the majority of office workers were turning to digital devices to interact with colleagues. The figure is likely even higher now. And it makes sense. If you think about our downtime, we on average spend 2 days, that's far too much, 2 hours a day interacting with people on Instagram and Facebook and things like that. And virtual connections have become much more natural to us. And that's why dragging people back into the office isn't a magic wand that's going to make people more productive, more collaborative, and more creative. So by now you might be thinking, well, what's all this got to do with IC? Well, as internal communicators, our role is all about connecting and engaging colleagues, to educate, inform, and facilitate those conversations, and to galvanise the organisation with common goals. And so I'm guessing that a bit like me, you found that quite tough when remote working first came in. That question of how to connect colleagues and forge relationships between people sitting at screens in different locations kind of got us all thinking on our feet. And digital channels and platforms became the tools of our trade. We had to get creative. And now face-to-face is back on the table. Should we all be breathing a sigh of relief and welcoming people back? For me, the virtual working world really isn't going to go anywhere fast, at least not as quickly as it landed in our desks in the first place. And in many sectors, it's actually expanding. So if as internal communicators, we're going to add value to our organisations, we need to continue to enhance the employee experience through great communication in the virtual environment. So Forbes first coined the phrase virtual intelligence, and they used it to describe the skills and behaviours employees need to work effectively through digital channels. We first came across the term when we were helping a client explore how to create a greater sense of community and shared connection across their organisation to stimulate that collaboration and reduce silo working mentality. We were fascinated by the huge impact that the remote environment was having on culture. And so we began to look at virtual intelligence through the lens of internal communications to see how we can use our influence as a community to drive the right kind of behaviours, to supercharge not only happiness and engagement for people, but also productivity, collaboration and creativity too. So in the moment, I'm going to share with you a model that we created based on this idea of virtual intelligence, which is practical and action-based, you'll be relieved to know. So you can take your best ideas and apply them in a way that works for you and your people. So at the heart of the model are 3 themes. So you think of those as the kind of foundations of virtual intelligence. Any organisation that wants their employees to smash it out of the park in a virtual working world needs to have these 3 things in place. So to start off, I'll give you a quick whistle-stop tour of those 3 themes, and then we'll look at how you can benchmark them and bring them to life. So the first theme is all around knowing your stuff. At the heart of a hybrid and first environment, a great digital ecosystem has to exist, one that has all the tools to replicate in-person interactions. And stepping into this new digital ecosystem is a bit like moving to a new city, except there's no house numbers, there's no street names, so you're pretty much having to find your own way. So unless employees know where they are, where these things are, what they're there for and how to use them, they're pretty pointless, and actually they're a waste of subscription fees. So the second theme is around adopting the actions. So we all have different ways of working, and they're based around our preferences, our needs, and to be honest, some of our habits that we've developed over time. Some people love using email, others prefer instant messenger. That's just one of a few examples that you may come across. And to try and accommodate all of this into your working environment can be very confusing and chaotic. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have spent plenty of time looking for that message and hunting across Teams, across email, and across WhatsApp to locate it. So having ways of working that are clear enough for everyone to stick to makes things so much easier and smoother. And that's about forming consistent habits and etiquette that makes life more predictable and manageable for each other. And the third theme, trust is everything. So bonding with teammates is a not so secret formula to great collaboration. True bonding only happens when trust exists. And there are 2 types of trust that matter. One is relational trust, and the other is competence-based trust. So relational trust is built through respectful interactions in which people feel valued and listened to. And competence-based trust is essentially believing somebody has the ability to do what they say they will do. And this is one of the areas that remote working has had the most impact on, because trust in reality is built by spending time together, not always round work-based tasks. Social bonds are formed through verbal and non-verbal communication in ways that can convey understanding, empathy, and shared concern. That's much harder to achieve through a screen because we lose that depth of interaction and the cues that come from in-person exchanges. We can only see this bit of ourselves. So that's a whistle-stop tour of the 3 themes. And hopefully that's kind of started to spark some reflection for you. And perhaps you're starting to think about your own experience. But how do you measure the themes? How do you benchmark their existence in your everyday and across your organisation? So you'll be pleased to know we've got a very robust but straightforward way of doing that. We've stripped it of the jargon. We've not got any bells and whistles. It's very user-friendly and easy to understand, as most powerful IC usually is. So I'm talking about questions and conversations. And the following sample questions that I'm about to share will help you get a measure of your virtual intelligence. They'll all touch on things that, when done well, can really lubricate the wheels of productivity. And as conversation starters, they'll surface possible barriers to connection and collaboration across your teams. As well as using them for polls and surveys, they can provide a baseline that you can then use to track your effectiveness of your efforts. So here we go. In terms of know your stuff, it's questions around Are the people kept well informed and updated around digital tools? Do they have access to training to use those digital tools and platforms effectively? Is it clear which channel or tool to use for a specific communications action or ask? In adopt the actions, do we have clear and consistent ways of working in our virtual workspace? Do we honour and respect our agreed ways of workings? And are we aware of others' time and needs in a digital environment? And finally, trust is everything. Are we investing time in getting to know each other personally? Do we feel connected to our colleagues and parts of our team? I feel part of a team. And do we trust those colleagues to do what they say they're going to do and do it really well? Now, you might be thinking that IC is not responsible for any technical training about how to use digital tools, and you'd be right. But it can certainly spark the debate and highlight the need on behalf of everybody within the organisation, as well as doing that all-important job of translating technical training lingo and hefty user manuals into something short, snappy, and easy to get hold of. So in having these conversations, you've got a benchmark. Let's turn to the actions you can take as internal communicators to make those foundations as strong as possible. In Know Your Stuff, IC is in the perfect position to inform, educate, and signpost. When we welcome a new starter into the office space, the first thing we typically do is give them a tour of the building, show them what's where, who's where, and how things are done. So from the system of the personal fridge space to who makes a brew and the all-important stationery cupboard, we kind of cover it off to make them feel comfortable in their environment. And in a digital environment, the equivalent is a helicopter view of all the tools, the platforms, the channels you use, available with a guide on what to use and when, such as emails for formal company-wide announcements, the intranet for business updates, and being clear about the benefits of each and how they all fit together. And by encouraging the consistent use of tools such as Loom or Mural for collaboration, it means people get familiar and comfortable with these things and crack on rather than trying to fathom out how to use them each time they log on. And whilst these topics are usually covered in an induction, it's also hugely valuable to remind people of what they have available on an ongoing basis, because it's amazing how often we lose sight of these things. We're in the thick of the working day. It's worth signposting to people where they can tap into training and skills that will get them up to speed with those digital toolkits. And that's a real quick win for fast-tracking virtual intelligence capability. You might want to create some forums for sharing tips and tricks or even get-arounds on pain points on things like Viva Engage, just to help people be more productive. And facilitate discussions around what's potentially missing from that digital ecosystem or any areas for improvement. In terms of establishing and embedding the role model, how here culture really comes into play. IC is in a privileged position, being able to influence behaviours, to lead the discussion around expectations and how values guide virtual working etiquette, creating and communicating standards around ways of working. It helps establish healthy habits that make things more predictable and understandable. And that's really important, as the way we behave in the virtual working world has a direct knock-on effect on those around us. Our actions can so easily help or hinder others, much more so than working together in the office. If you can't see someone, you have absolutely no idea if they're busy, available, or working on that deliverable you absolutely must have by the day's out, which leads neatly to the first action that will bring adopting actions to life. So in the virtual world, colleagues have no idea whether you are sitting, no idea whether you're sitting at your desk or grabbing a brew. Unless you keep your status up to date and your diary bang up to speed, people don't know what your plans are. For example, imagine you're due to deliver a presentation at 3 and you're waiting on a colleague to answer a critical question beforehand. The clock's ticking, you've got 25 minutes left, and their status says gone for lunch back in 45 minutes. You have no idea when that 45 minutes began. You're not sure whether to wait or go and look elsewhere. And that's adding to the stress of an already stressful situation. Simply by adding the specifics, gone to lunch back at 1:30, everyone's clear about what's happening. And when you get a call, make sure people know to put their cameras on. It's not about checking up on other people, but it's about building trust Nobody enjoys talking to a blank screen, wondering what's going on at the other end. It's even harder to read that body language when the language is cloaked in darkness. When everyone's visible, accountable and present in this way, it shows respect for each other and keeps those wheels of productivity running more effectively. The second crucial aspect of this part of the model is about being courteous. So we found common courtesy became one of the most important virtues in our remote working environment. That's things like preferences around meeting times to accommodate life's commitments. Avoiding school runs for parents with small children is a great example of that. Turning up to meetings on time or letting people know you're going to be late. Putting gaps in between meetings so people can take a comfort break. I think we've all sat on Teams calls throughout the day hoping that we're going to get 5 minutes at some point. And minimising those background disruptions where possible. While some people might enjoy the clattering cafe background for white noise, it does make hearing people on conference calls very difficult. And another big one for us at H&H was around respecting downtime. Because we embrace flexible working, we have our early birds and we have our night owls. And it's really important that someone trying to relax on an evening doesn't want a barrage of questions from a colleague who's just hit their peak work zone. And again, with that, simple communication is key to nailing the etiquette. So what does courtesy look like in your organisation? Ask your people, encourage them to be open with each other, and make sure it's all communicated effectively, because it'll help everyone enjoy a more respectful, harmonious virtual environment that brings out everybody's best. And then trust is everything. Building relational trust is that much harder in that virtual environment. Most meetings are arranged with a specific outcome or topic in mind. And because often only one or two people connect at once, it's way more difficult to enjoy ad hoc chats with multiple people bouncing off each other at the same time. And that can be really lonely and isolating place if we're not careful. So it's critical to nurture an environment that encourages social interaction, gives permission for people to get together virtually for something really simple but super important, and that's the art of developing relationships. Internal communications can absolutely lead the way with that culture, using a conversational tone, avoiding cold corporate language, and injecting people stories that go beyond the workplace. Explicitly encouraging and creating those moments where people can get together and work and bond on something other than work. And remember to include ways for everyone to interact and respond to communications. It could be as simple as quick polls in team meetings, inviting thoughts and opinions, emails and posts, or creating virtual activities that stimulate interaction and discussion. Because that ability to participate can make a huge difference to remote workers who may be feeling disconnected. It's also worth creating opportunities for people to come together in a virtual setting for more relaxed purposes, perhaps cooking together, sharing or talking about favourite books. And in our agency, we formed a community of people around physical activity. So even though we're not together, we are all exercising and sharing our experiences. We share and celebrate those times away from the laptop. And through this, we each get a glimpse of each other's lives behind the work curtain. And it's really strengthened our sense of personal connection immensely. So that other type of trust that we talked about is vitally important in building strong working relationships, that competency-based trust. Working remotely does mean a lot of doing the do away from each other. You get together, you agree what's going to be done, and everyone goes off. But then you put your faith in the fact that it will get done and done well, your own contribution included. Building this kind of trust comes with positive experience, and individuals can take steps towards creating that sense of trust by always doing what they say they're going to do, making sure it's done on time and to a high standard, being responsive with communication. If there's not enough time to respond properly, an acknowledgement that a message has been read and received takes the weight of worry off the sender. But IC can enhance this across the organisation too. We can shine a spotlight on the achievement of teams and individuals and celebrate people's contributions by listening carefully to what people are saying and demonstrating what you've heard and understood by acting on it and playing it back to them, and finding ways to stimulate the exchange of expertise, ideas, knowledge between people, teams and locations. You could use Viva Engage or Workplace as a channel to support this. And show what it means to take pride in your own work and having high standards by setting the example in communications. So that's the model in its entirety. And I'm sure you've realised, as I did, that internal communications is in an incredibly privileged position to be able to enhance virtual intelligence, and it comes all down to great communication. And the outcome has so many benefits, not least of which is clearing the path of those typical barriers that can hamper productivity, creativity, and collaboration. You'll have contributed to creating the ideal conditions that make up a pro-hybrid environment, one that considers equally the needs of remote workers as those who work together in person. And by investing in virtual intelligence and proving our ability to work successfully together in a virtual world, we can help celebrate the possibilities of remote working. Because it seems such a shame to lose it after discovering how incredibly life-enhancing and beneficial it can be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So much to process there, actually. And from the title of the talk, what I kept writing down repeatedly there was human relationships, respect, and trust. And just how important it is now where the tools are becoming even more sophisticated. So showing that respect and active listening, because more than ever, because there are AI tools coming out now, I believe, where you can just sit there, get a summary, and actually respond to you whilst you're at a meeting. So if you're not present and visible, how do you know you're actually interacting with a human at some stage? And even at this point now, and they're invested in what you spent some time and effort on. So really, really interesting, and so many great active bits of advice about how to go about doing that. So I thank you. I do have one direct question, if that's okay.
Go for it.
And you don't have to be the authority in it, because nobody knows the answer. But I'd like to get your take. I'd like to get your take. With the drive from CEOs, some CEOs, the majority, if you look at the stats, to return to office, and they may return to office full time, is that just because they don't trust their people, or giving them credit? Are there clear stats that we are more productive remotely if CEOs are being potentially so blinkered and not trusting their people and wanting to return to the office?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting question. I would hate to diss 76% of CEOs around. Yeah. I think the reality is it's too early to say. Based on we're out of lockdown. It feels like millions of years ago, but actually not that long ago. I think it's probably too early to tell. I think there's some comfort in going back to what you know. I mean, as humans, we are creatures of routine. And as a CEO, there is a certain reassurance to seeing everyone in front of you. So I wonder if there is a journey for some CEOs around virtual intelligence themselves. An understanding. But I mean, the voice of the employee is very loud. That the majority of people are looking for a blend, whether that's, a day at home or 3 or 4, that's very individual, but some degree of flexibility. And, people did, they were very productive and very collaborative during lockdown. So it feels like potentially it's a hammer to crack a nut, when actually, being able to blend the two together in a way that works for your organization feels to me to be the way forward.
Makes a lot of sense to me, and thank you for your perspective. Just want to see if we've got any comments from the crowd. Not as yet. So just want to say thank you so much. And this obviously is available on demand, and I'm going to go back and watch it, because there was a lot in there, a lot of them awesome elements and thought-provoking content. But yeah, I might go watch again this evening. So, thank you so much. Thank you for your continued support, and please, everybody watching, do go check out H&H. As you've heard from Cathy, they really know their stuff and leaders in this area. So, just thanks so much, Cathy, and hope you have an awesome rest of the summer.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Wow. That's why we used to do one a day. Now we're doing two a day, just double the value and the learning fun. So without further ado, let's get on to our second storyteller. And storyteller probably being the perfect description for them, as you're about to find out. It's a genuine thrill to be focusing on this topic, as I believe it's a vital skill in work and in life. And the title of their talk is Storytelling, a Workplace Superpower. And I think that'll probably blend in nicely with what Cathy's just been talking about. So please welcome to the summer series, best-selling author Jamie Mackenzie. Hey, how you doing?
Hey Matt, how you doing?
Very well, thank you very much. Very well. Really looking forward to hearing what you've got to share and speaking to you afterwards.
Absolutely, it's lovely to follow Cathy actually, especially with her emphasis on people. The human connection, communication. Your emphasis on AI there as well. Humans are timeless. Technology changes, so I think there's a lot in there to reflect on for sure, Matt.
I think we just have the soundbite for your talk.
Anyway, I'll make sure I patent that one. That's no problem.
I'll leave you to it, but have fun.
Thank you, Matt, and hello everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or if you're watching on another day on the repeat, hello, whatever time that may be. And thank you ever so much for the opportunity to talk and to share about my talk, which is all around the importance of storytelling with impact. So I'll just, there we go. I'm presenting now. Excellent. The technicalities are finished there. Excellent stuff. All about virtual working, isn't it? I think Cathy was saying. So thanks for the wonderful introduction. And yes, I am a best-selling author. I'll come on to that a bit later on. But I am truly passionate about the importance of storytelling, not just in the workplace, as Matt mentioned, but also in life as well. In fact, as me, I'm on a personal mission to improve the impact and life-changing nature of lives for all ages through the power of storytelling. It's been a huge part of my life so far, my career, which I'll explore with you in a second. And it's not always the topic that you're talking about, certainly in the office and the workplace, telling stories. Sometimes it's reserved for those big moments like movies or story time with the children at the end of the day, or indeed other musical moments, theatre. But actually storytelling is a process and a methodology to level up and impact communication. So we'll explore that in a lot more detail. But storytelling has been with us since the dawn of time. And it is a timeless technique. And going back to the Neanderthal era, 65,000 years ago, there's the earliest recording of storytelling, which is actually a cave painting called the Red Hand painting, found in a cave, which was created 65,000 years ago. And that's the earliest record of picturizing a story, a moment, whether it be for a learning experience, whether it be for communication, but it's the first time. And since then, and through all of time, storytelling has always been present. Now, if you were to go back to when you were first born, you probably wouldn't remember it. My mum remembers my birth, certainly, but I don't. In that moment, as soon as you're born, another human being will start communicating with you. And typically, they will start telling you a story. And so from the presence of my birth, my parents shared who they were, what they were about, who my family were, and more so that they loved me. As soon as I was born into the world, storytelling was with me. And ever since then, through the childhood years into your young adult and adult years, storytelling has been present in all of our lives. So with something so present, something so habitual in what we do, we all desire stories. We crave them to be shared with us, but equally, we also crave to share them as well, because storytelling has a certain impact that is incredibly important to influence and to shape our decisions as human beings and inspire memories too. But if you can use storytelling, so considering that we have this superpower, as I like to call it, that connects over 8 billion people around the world, regardless of culture, regardless of race, gender, regardless of language. Storytelling is in the lives of 8 billion people from birth. If you can harness that superpower, then you have the ability to make an incredibly positive impact to people's lives, to change them through the power of storytelling and through the power of impactful communication. Yet, it is a superpower and a skill that is so underutilized, underrated, and under-discussed in the workplace, and to be honest, beyond as well. Now, I've always recognized the importance of storytelling, and I'll share a story a bit later on about Brussels sprouts as to why. But certainly through my career over the last 20 years, storytelling has played a significant part. So I've been very lucky over the last 20 years to work for 3 big brands, incredible companies. So at Toshiba, I spent 6 years there, the majority of which is their head of product management for the UK. I then moved to Samsung and spent a good 5 years in Samsung, heading up their B2B marketing in the UK and Ireland. And then I moved on to Sodexo, a facilities management people management and engagement company as well. And I spent just under 10 years on their board as their CMO for the UK and Ireland. And in those 20 years, covering commercial marketing strategy-based roles, in that time, storytelling played a significant role in what I did. But equally, not just functionally or technically, I was also very fortunate in that time to spend 19 years of those 20 in leadership positions. So whether it be leading a student of 1 at my early days at Toshiba, all the way through to a team of 50 marketeers in my time at Sodexo, and then virtual projects with hundreds of people across different continents. So again, going back to Cathy's point about the importance of virtual intelligence, it is key. But I've had that exposure to people engagement and leadership experiences. And again, through that entire time, storytelling has played a huge part of what I've done. Now, I've been very, very lucky in that time to have achieved many things, which I'm personally really proud of. You know, huge growth within Sodexo, working with central government to create products during COVID to support the management and monitoring of the behavior of the virus during that period of time. I've also been very lucky to have been involved in and led a merger and acquisition and cultural transition and business transition post that. But equally, I have failed a lot. You know, I've made some terrible decisions. I have upset people and I have lost money for business units within these brands. So I've enjoyed achievement and success, but equally I've I've learned from failure. And that's really important, so important. But the one consistent thing that flows through all of that has been storytelling. Storytelling has allowed me to achieve and succeed, but also storytelling has allowed me to fail and learn as well. But through my 20 years and these experiences within these organizations, there's a currency. There's a currency that's floating around every single day, which drives these businesses that I've experienced. And this currency is a currency which I see across every single organization, including the ones that you work in as well. So if you just take a look here, there's a number of words on the slide, and I hope that some of them look familiar to you, because that currency in business is what I believe is the untold story of business. It's not the thing that everybody always talks about, which typically is about money, the end result of a business's performance. But typically when you take a bird's eye view of a business, I see it broken down into these 3 areas. You've got the metrics that everyone is challenged on pretty much every single day. So you've got a ton of different stuff in there, and there'll be no doubt new metrics that you'll be thinking about as you look at this. But anything from share price to revenue, profit, through to number of customers, retention rate, net development. These are the metrics that your business is measured on. That's ultimately the outcome. But luckily, we've got some people engagement metrics in there, such as employee engagement, employee happiness, and ENPS. That's how the business is measured. The measurements are driven by the behavior of the stakeholders and the actions and initiatives that your business takes with them. So let me give you an example. We take one of our, what I think, our most important stakeholder in business, which are the employees. And our employees, we can engage with through company events, town hall meetings, L&D moments, one-to-one sessions, different projects that they can work on to enrich their enjoyment in the workplace. The outcome of those activities with the stakeholder is the metric, which is employee engagement and employee happiness, in ENPS, for example. So these activities and scenarios with the stakeholders drive the metrics. Now, the currency that no one talks about, but that happens so many times every single day, is this. And that is the communication and interaction between people. If you think about it, a town hall meeting is a communication and interaction between human beings. You know, the development of employer value proposition, I've got put Matt's teeth back in as well. Employer value proposition is the communication between people. And even revenue as a metric is driven by customers buying products, supported by marketing and product and salespeople and everyone that makes the engine work. That is the communication between people. So the communication between people, I believe, is the most important currency in business, whether that be physically, virtually, hybridly, digitally, whatever you want to use. The communication between people is the currency in business. And the pathway to impactful communication, because if you can drive impactful communication, you can drive better activities and scenarios, better reactions from stakeholders, and then ultimately better metrics for the business. That pathway is storytelling. Storytelling truly is the epicenter and the heart of impactful communication. So if you can level up your storytelling capability, not just as an individual, as a team, as a culture, think about those millions of communication moments that are happening within your business every single week, between your teams, your external stakeholders, all the different activities that are happening. Each one of those, you have an opportunity to improve the impact of, which will ultimately lead to an improved business metric. So storytelling is, I believe, the untold story in business. But it's a story that I personally have been aware of for a very long time. And it's a story, as you can probably tell, I'm extremely passionate about. But you might be asking the question, okay, Jamie, that makes complete sense. Why Brussels sprouts? What have Brussels sprouts got to do with the art of storytelling, the untold story in business, and a broader impact on communication? So to answer that question, you hypothetically might be asking me now, is let me tell you a story about Brussels sprouts. In fact, let me tell you how Brussels sprouts impacted my life from the start of my working career. I was during my placement year at Toshiba, at university, and I was asked to apply for a role at Toshiba. Now, at the time, I thought it was the Japanese car manufacturing firm, but when I turned up, clearly it wasn't. Clearly, it was not a car manufacturing firm. But I turned up and I had the interview at Toshiba. And I sat down and I was interviewed by two amazing guys, Jeremy and Steve. And they asked me a question, Jamie, what are you most proud of? What's your biggest achievement? Now, at the time, I was about 20 years old and I'd only really had two jobs in my life. The first was as a paper boy, and then the second one was working in a greengrocer's. So I decided to share the story about my time at the greengrocer's, where on Christmas Eve, we had the busiest day you could ever imagine. But on that particular day, I sold 28 bags of sprouts. Now, it wasn't through clever marketing techniques or sales approaches. It was just a genuine supply-demand scenario where it's a seasonal peak. Everybody was after that lovable vegetable, for some, not so much for others, sprouts. And they were literally flying off the shelves. So at the end of the day, I checked the bin outside because I was desperate to understand how many we sold. And sure enough, we sold 28 bags, which is around about 10,000 individual sprouts, if you're interested. I then said to my boss, is this a record? He said, Jamie, I have no idea. I've never documented, but it probably is up there. So I shared this story in my interview at Toshiba. Now, skip forward. I got offered the role and I went into the business on day one, sat down with my two new bosses, and they said, congratulations. And I asked them for feedback, what was it? And they said, Jamie, it's the story that you told about 28 bags of sprouts that got you the job. It's not necessarily the sales and marketing and the engagement parts that you also shared in the story. That story stood you out. It made you different. It landed with us right here in our heart. And we thought to ourselves, we really want to work with that individual. So that story, I'm not saying is that got me to here today and what I'm doing today, but if I hadn't have told that story, I wouldn't have taken the path that I've taken on to today, which I'm incredibly grateful for. So storytelling and sprouts have always been a big part of my life, and it's always reminded me on the importance of storytelling, but more so the impact that it can make on other people if you can get your storytelling right. So inspired by this story, and skipping forward to October 2023, I took the decision to step away from the corporate world, certainly working within the corporate world or working for the corporate world, and write a book about something that I'm incredibly passionate about. And that book is this one here. You can see it, full of sprouts. It's called 28 Bags of Sprouts, Storytelling with Impact. And my passion, my mission to make a positive impact and change people's lives of all ages through the power of storytelling is what drove me to create this book. So launched in March of this year, it was Amazon's #1 hottest new release, which was amazing. And it became a top 5 bestseller within the first month within its main category, which is business communication. And considering the company it keeps, is pretty awesome. I've never written or edited or published a book before, but certainly with this one, I was really keen to ensure I could give my best quality possible to it. But the book is all about how to create impactful storytelling. And funnily enough, sprouts are heavily involved in this book, because within the book, you have stories from myself, but you also have stories from 6 experts who have contributed to allow me to bring different experiences, perspectives, and viewpoints to impactful storytelling. And within the book, we have a model called the Sprout model, which is a model I'd like to talk to you about in a second. But what I found with storytelling within the workplace is that it has the most profound and positive impact you can have. I have worked with some of the best leaders that I've ever worked with or even partnered with. And the greatest communicators and storytellers are the ones that can transform company and people performance. Equally, I have also worked with terrible leaders who communicate and storytell poorly. And the net result of that is business underperformance and people destruction, as I like to call it, which is the destruction of a person's character and their engagement levels and their ability to perform, not through capability, but through poor communication and poor storytelling. So the gap of storytelling in the workplace, both myself and the experts in the book believe, is significant. But the good news is that there's great opportunity to close the gap. And the book is designed to do that. So introducing 28 Bags of Sprouts and the Sprout model. It is available paperback, ebook, and if you do want to listen to my voice for 5.5 hours, it's also available in audiobook as well. But the book itself includes the Sprout model. Now, if there's one slide out of this whole deck, apart from the previous one, that you want to screenshot and take now, it's this one, because this is the Sprout model. This is the storytelling structure that I've created based on, of course, a Brussels sprout, which you can apply to any communication scenario as long as it involves people. So going back to the slide that I showed earlier, which is about all the different activities and initiatives that surround your business with stakeholders who are people at the moment, you can apply this to any one of those. And what it does, it takes that communication and it runs it through a storytelling methodology that I have adopted to be applicable for all communication. The end result is that your communication will improve. the impact of your communication will improve. Why? Because what you've done through working through this is you've tapped into the principles of storytelling, the principles which have been with us since birth, the principles which drive us, the principles which we crave. Now, it's very easy to get complacent and lazy with communication because we do it all the time and it's become a hygiene, but actually the gold is in the communication between people. So if you can lift it through storytelling, you will achieve a greater outcome. So I'll just spend 5 minutes now just working through the model, just to give you a little bit of an explanation, because this is about the pragmatic, what can I do to improve my storytelling? So you would take your communication scenario and you would run it through these 6 layers. So to summarize it for you, the first thing that you would do, so if you can imagine yourself communicating a new strategy to a board, you're presenting in a town hall meeting, you've got a one-to-one meeting for a performance appraisal, you're going for a promotion, you're asking for a pay rise. In that communication moment, the first thing you've got to ask yourself is this: what is the impact that I want to make? And typically, the impact can range anything from I want to educate someone through to I want to persuade them, or I want to even inspire them. So there are 6 impacts that I've identified in the book, ranging from education all the way through to inspiration. Knowing that at the start of your communication is key. Why? Because the tone, the positioning, and the content of your communication from that point onwards will change completely. If you want to inspire someone, it's very different than if you want to educate someone, and how you deliver that will also change as well. The second area is people. Now, we always talk about knowing your audience, right, when it comes to communication, and that is super important. Having an understanding of the diversity of your audience is really key, but also remembering that every single person on this planet is an individual as well. But in my model, it's not just about that. It's not just about segmenting them into who they are. It's asking yourself the question, how do you want to make them feel? By eliciting emotions, by eliciting, I'll say it, hormones, that also gives you the ability to communicate with greater impact. But also within the people layer, it's also about asking yourself that you need to be you. Being you is one of the most powerful ingredients that you can incorporate into your communication style. Because if you're authentic, if you demonstrate vulnerability, and you are relatable to your audience, then you can create a much faster connection and you can have a much greater impact. Now, interestingly enough, for that part, the being you, very difficult in business, especially if you're a senior leader, right? Or you're a CEO or a CPO, you're sitting on the board, senior leader. I can't demonstrate weakness. I can't show any vulnerability to my team because I'm supposed to know the answers. Arguably, that's one of the worst things that you can do. Be yourself, be honest, build trust, and the engagement and communication benefit will come from that. So after you've identified your impact and you've seen the people and how you want to make them feel as human beings, you then move into a traditional storytelling structure of start point, main event, and end point. Now, this has been around since the dawn of time, so I'm not going to challenge the storytelling structure, but there are certain ingredients within each of these layers that you can challenge yourself with in order to improve the impact of your communication. Within start point, for example, think about the direction you want to take your communication. You know, how many times do you actually sit down and plot that through before you do it, especially some of the bigger communication moments. Similarly, in start point, context. It's really important. One of the biggest failings I had during my career is that when I was pitching for investment, pitching for budget, or pitching a new project or idea, I would assume that my hierarchy above me in the corporate world had the same level of knowledge as me. They don't. They know less because you're in it and they're not. So bringing context can really help to get that decision making and get people's thoughts there much faster than if you hadn't. So you set the scene really with the start point, and then you come into the main event. And this is the crux of your communication. It's kind of the typically opportunity or challenge that you're facing or faced and how you're addressing it. And you address all of that within your main event. And then you move on to your end point. And your end point really is about clarity and conclusion, but also for certainly some of the bigger communication moments, like a town hall when you don't see people afterwards, is something called the lasting impression. And this is what people think about of what you've just said or communicated post-event. Not enough people, not enough leaders think about the lasting impression. Very, very important. And then the sixth and final layer that, not through fluke, but by design, surrounds the whole sprout is nurture. And these are the types of things and ingredients that you will put in to make your communication engaging and relevant for the audience. So things like creativity, energy, perspective, all really important elements, data, all the things that you need to really enrich and nurture your communication to give it the best possible impact that it can make. So these are the 6 layers. And as you work through them in the model, in the book, and as you work through them in the day-to-day communication, it will start to become subconscious. And already you will start to think about every communication that you do and run it through this particular model. So the book itself and the model isn't just used by everyday people like me. We do have a celebrity backer as well in Ryland Clark. For those that don't know, Ryland Clark is quite a popular entertainment media personality in the UK and I think to an extent globally as well. But, you know, it just shows that anyone and everyone can use and learn from storytelling. And Ryland and I met, and Ryland was absolutely amazing. I signed a copy for him of my book, which was mental. But he's taken that away and he messaged me and he's using the principles to help enrich his areas as well. So storytelling isn't just about your day-to-day at home. It's not just about the workplace, but it's also about the big public viewing events as well. Storytelling really is for absolutely everybody. It's just about the confidence of the structure and applying it as well. So with a couple of minutes left, just to kind of leave you with 3 key takeaways from this, which I hope you've enjoyed. Number 1, please view every moment, a communication moment, as a storytelling opportunity. Any communication you can apply through a storytelling methodology, and you can improve the impact on other human beings and hopefully get the desired impact that you want, or give yourself a much better chance of achieving it. The second piece of advice is always apply a structure. There are loads of structures out there. Of course, I'd love you to buy the book and use the Sprout model, because I believe it's a structure that's, one, it's unique, but also it's applicable to all communication and can really level that up for you in any scenario. And the final point is that please practice storytelling. It's absolutely free. You don't need a subscription. You don't need gym equipment. You don't need to do it at certain times of day, or when the kids have gone to bed or when people aren't around. Any time that you're communicating with another person, which for all of us on average is 80% of our waking day, you can practice storytelling. 1 element, 2 elements, all 6 elements, doesn't matter. Practice it, try, fail, smile, because that's important, and learn. And eventually you will see the direct impact of increasing the impact of your communication through the power of storytelling. So that's it from me. Just over 25 minutes. So I think I'm just about on brief, Matt. But thanks everybody for listening. I really appreciate it. And just a couple of, special for this call, a couple of previews of 3 other books I have coming out later in the year, along with my storytelling and business coaching that I do as well. But I passionately believe in the power of storytelling for all ages. So this version, 28 Bags of Sprouts, will be also available age appropriate for ages 4 to 8 and 8 to 12. And I'm working with schools and education trusts and kids to create these. And also I have a book launching in January next year, which is called Sprouting Happiness, which is all about my personal journey over the last 12 months and the model that I've used to level up my happiness, to make it a priority and make happiness my habit as well, all through sprouting. So thank you for listening. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you so much. Scribbling incessantly throughout that talk there. I'm just wondering if the 4 to 8-year-old book would be good for me.
It's good for me, man. I enjoyed writing it.
You know, because it's you forget. Well, I forget. I used to write stories as a child constantly. That's all I did. Like, that's probably the main thing I did outside of just playing was writing stories, and it's something that I left behind at probably like 10 or 11 or whatever it might be. But it's such an important part of business and life. And I'm really, really grateful for you simplifying the structure there to try and, make sense of it, because one of the hardest things in the world, in my opinion, is the blank piece of paper.
Yeah.
Being faced with that, and you know the story you want to tell.
Yeah.
So one question for you I have is, so many people on this call who we talk to are constantly trying to get buy-in from leadership to try and even fail, like you say, and hopefully have permission to fail often and succeed. But what's one of the best ways of, outside of the structure you've just shown us, like how have you got buy-in over the years successfully from leadership to invest in an idea, to invest in trying something different to positively impact the business? After you.
No, I got so I think, I know you said to not say it, but I'm going to say it, and then I'll quickly move on. Structure. Honestly, it's the one thing, and what you'll find, and with anybody, you've got it in here, you've got it in your head, and you can even visualize the outcome, and you know how to manifest that. The challenge is, for many people, how do you deliver that in a way that it resonates with the audience and gives you the best chance for a decision? For me, number one, it's always about structure. It's always about the structure of information. I know some people who are brilliant entrepreneurs who have gone to angel investors, but they are so incredibly technical that when they sit down with them, they give them all the details. And by the way, the details are amazing, but that's not how the angel investors want to hear it. They will happily hear the same context, but it needs to be presented in a different way. So it's the same content and it's the same impact and outcome, but you're presenting it differently. Structure will give you the self-coaching that you need. So I will say the Sprout model one more time, but it will give you the self-coaching you need to put it in the best possible place to then deliver it in the way that you want to. But parking that aside, the other thing is that I strongly believe that for many people, when you go into a boardroom or you go to investors, you go to perceived senior financial institutes or anyone where you need something, you have to go all formal and you have to go all numbers. Now, that's important, and it's an important part of the story. But what you need to do is to go as a human being. So in everything that I did, and I've engaged with many stakeholders, not once have I not been Jamie Mackenzie. Every single time I've been Jamie Mackenzie. So I've always kept my human, natural style, whatever the role I'm in and whatever the content or topic I'm talking about. So being you, for me, is the absolute key thing. To then have structure that gives you the content in the right way for you then to deliver it, that will also give you the confidence, and actually more of you will come out in that respect. So being you and remembering that they are human beings on the other side at the moment, not AI that are making those decisions, but while there's human beings involved, use the emotion, use the connection, use that side of it, as well as the data to support the story. The data is not the story. The data is there to support the story. And I think if you can tap into that more so, that's what I found has always worked. But, it's not a magical formula. I'm not saying, use the Sprout model, you're going to get a ton of money every time, or you're going to get the structure you want or organization, but it gives you the best chance to get the impact and make the impact that you want. So that's probably my best way to answer you there.
No, fantastic. And made me think that these people that you're presenting to or pitching for investment, they're already investing in you. So being you, they're already making that investment in you. So, which, so speaking of personal experiences, sometimes you forget.
And certainly depending on those watching, whether you're in a B2B or a B2C environment, but typically B2B or people orientated environment, the flesh and blood is that's what people are. They're building off your aura. That's where the relationships are forming. But structuring your communication appropriately will give you a much better result for sure.
Well, fantastic. I really appreciate everything all the knowledge you've imparted on us. And I again, like Cathy's, I'm going to be watching this back. So much in there. I'm already thinking I might have to reschedule my session at the end of the week because I want to imply your structure to my story that I've started to craft. So watch this space.
You're very welcome. And the book's available on Amazon, by the way, so anyone that wants to kind of explore it and the ideas that I have. But thanks for the opportunity, Matt. And I wish everybody, and remember, stories change lives. You know, I'd love the audience to remember that because they really do. They really do.
They do. They 100% do. So thank you so much, Jamie.
Thank you.
And we'll speak soon. Thank you. Wow. You could tell that I was just resting on my my notepad there, scribbling. So my hair's gone a bit crazy. But thank you so much to Cathy and Jamie. A lot to unpack there across storytelling, building trust, human relationships, respect, all very relevant in the ever-evolving workplace that we find ourselves in. And it's funny, not that we design it this way, but great businesses keep coming back to putting their people first and how you interact with people on the human level. And I think that's where the competitive advantage does lie. So really appreciate these talks. And we'll be sharing them on demand. Please look up Cathy, H&H and Jamie on LinkedIn too, because I know they're there. And we'll be back for day 3 tomorrow with 2 totally different stories and storytellers for you to give new perspective to other elements of the workplace. So thanks for now. Speak soon.